YouTubers. Today I wanted to show you how to repair a BIC 900 series turntable. Today our subject will be a 940, although you can use a lot of these repair tactics for 920, 940, 960, and some of the 980. So what you'll commonly see is that the platter's frozen on. With a combination of heat and penetrating oil, you can usually loosen the bearing up to get it off. The mechanism pretty much always has the same failure. This component here gets sticky. The speed selector mechanism here gets sticky. In fact, these are damn near frozen. The queuing needs to be redamped. The arm return needs to be taken care of. And the motor's usually frozen too. About the only thing that's still good on this is the queuing. The queuing still works. So I won't be showing you how to do the queuing today, but Google a little bit of how to queuing on the 900 series and you'll come up with some answers. So the first thing to do is to make sure that the tone arm is locked down. In this case, the armrest on ours is busted off, so I have to be a little more careful. And for that, I have a little chingus here that we've made that's sitting back here. And this is just a piece of rubber piping with a little notch in the side. So we're going to put this up here. And the first thing you're going to want to do is grab a 1/4 inch nut driver and pop those nuts loose right there. Forgive me, this is going to be a little bit boring.
Can't play music in the background because they'll identify it as something of the third-party content.
And then they'll make me wipe my audio if I want to still keep it here without it being banned in some countries. I don't think I have the socket driver for that. So we'll just get a crescent wrench, size it up, and we'll pop this guy off too. And this spring-loaded Gizmodroid here is almost always sticky. We'll see if this one is or isn't. Nope, it's not. So that's actually a good thing. Do not lose the little rubber washer attached to the thrust bearing. In fact, I oftentimes will put rubber bands around it to hold it there. So then the next thing you'll need is pop that snap ring loose there. Which could be a little tricky one-handed. We'll see. It's probably going to go flying off into oblivion. Got that. Got the spring. And we got the cam follower piece. Take note of how that's all positioned there. That's important. Don't lose track of the positioning of that. And then you should be able to pull your cycling cam. Now the next thing you have to do is you have to remove these slide levers here and the one over here. So what you'll need to do that is get this up in an orientation that allows me to get to that. You'll first need to take loose this spring here and take note of what position that was on. In our case, it was that guy on the very far side. The next thing you'll need to do is you'll need to take loose the derailleur for the belt, which is that snap ring there. Don't lose the spring. Then the derailleur should just lift off. And then you've got this piece of linkage here, which you can lift up. And then you see that there's an opening over here that's kind of keyed. And that when you move it to the right position, if the camera will focus, it will just come off. So take note of that. And we're going to go back on our little pedestal here. That will allow you to take the linkage loose here, which you'll need to do on the other side. Take note of what position it's in. It's difficult to put it back in the other way, but I've seen some people force it. So we'll take that loose. Then you run into another difficulty, and that is you need to take loose this thing. Now on the 940s, the anti-skate is in the way. You can see that this little bar is here in the way. So you may have to get creative. If you want to risk it, you can very carefully lift up on this to gain enough clearance to get underneath the linkage, and then bring the arm return back enough so where you can get it up, then rotate it so that it pops out. That's that part there. And then as far as getting the number of records correct here, now that whole assembly is just stuck together, isn't it? This is a bit of a chore, and I would recommend taking this spring loose. It's the bluish one. They are colored to keep track of where they go, so don't lose it. And then you have to kind of fidget with it to get it through this detent here. And if you're good, you can just kind of pop it out. Sometimes I'm good and sometimes I'm not, although I'm only one-handed today because I'm holding the camera. So actually what I'm going to do is set the camera down momentarily and see if I can pop this out. There we go. So that's with the mechanism out. So now what we have to do is get this assembly apart. Now the first thing to note is that there are two springs at the bottom. Let's move the light so we have a better viewing angle here. There's this spring and there's this spring. This spring has less tension than the top one. If you can zoom in here, let's see if we can. You can see that the thickness of one spring is greater than the other. That one on the top is greater than the one on the bottom. Sorry for the shaky camera. My nerves aren't all that great. So we're going to take loose these springs. Sometimes they're glued in place, so you can't really lose them. I take them out anyway, just in case. There's also tape on the other side if it hasn't been molested that keeps them there. But I'm just going to position them for the bottom and the other one for the top so that I have a better memory as to where they go. Now you need to take loose that snap ring, and if I can remember where I put my silly little screwdriver, there it is. We can take loose, this is actually an E-clip, I'm sorry, it's not a snap ring. Technical jargon here. We're going to pop this guy off and not let the spring fly away. Now, if the mechanical tolerances on those bearings have worn significantly, they will want to drag a little bit. And so this spring needs to have about maybe 1 or 2 lengths cut. So in this case, this one and the one directly below it, I usually cut off, because if there's too much spring pressure in the worn bearing, it will still malfunction. So take note of that. And also, for God's sake, mark the orientation of these things, because if you screw it up, you'll have to tear the mechanism all back apart again. So I'll put a little T on here for top, and I'll put a B on here for bottom. And I'll also mark the orientation with a little line across where they match up. See that there? So that will save you some headaches. So let's pull these up and off. And they are supposed to separate. You can see all the scuzzy grunge underneath there that needs to be cleaned off. The key here with the BICs is to remove the grease. Don't try to use WD-40 or penetrating lube or whatever. Just get them apart and clean all that stuff off. Use scraping techniques with a knife. If you've got a solvent tank, use it, although I don't recommend, if you're a novice, to use a solvent tank, because if you're not careful, you will burn your skin off. So let's see if we can get these apart. One-handed, there we go. And you can see all of the crusties underneath here. All that disgusting looking stuff there you need to get off. It's just, it's an impediment. And then, since you've got that out of the way, we'll come back up here to our record selector and remove this. And it's notched. See the notch down there? You have to move it over to the side here so that it clears, and then you can lift it away. And all that grease underneath there needs to be removed. So definitely do that. If you had to do the queuing, you would need to very carefully remove this nut, which takes this assembly loose here. Once you get that off, underneath there is a small hex nut and a screw, which is the adjusting nut for the queuing height. That comes off. Then this bracket comes out, which will allow you to lift up and remove the queuing sleeve. And take note that when you remove this, there's a little thumb wheel adjuster on top that will fall off and probably fall onto your bench, and there's a little keeper spring back there that you can see. Don't let that fly away either. So this has been a video demonstration on how to disassemble a BIC 900 series for maintenance. We're going to clean all of the grease off of everything that has grease on it. The record selector arms here need to be spotlessly cleaned, and we'll use machine oil when they are. All the grease needs to be removed from the record number selector here, the plastic thing. That needs to be removed. No grease on that or oil whatsoever. The cycling cam, you see that small E-clip there, that needs to be removed, and the end of play trip needs to be pulled out. That little white thing there is a rubber tire. I would strongly recommend resurfacing that with some 2000 grit and also the metal surfaces that it interacts with, because that provides frictional coupling to trigger the end of play cycle, lift the arm and return it, and clean all the old scuzzy grease and stuff out of the tracks. I'll use either ceramic grease or moly grease, whichever. So hope this has been useful to you. The next video we'll do is more cleaning and reassembly, and then we'll test. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.